Hi there, my name is Justin Leoy, and I'm a psychotherapist in Brooklyn, New York. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I've been working with families in some capacity for about 10 years now. And now I work primarily with men, and in particular, men who are becoming or who recently become dads. I found in this that a dad's issues don't always get as much attention as they may need, and I think this is most likely because even the most progressive among us can still fall into that role of, I gotta be the sturdy oak, or let me hold all my stuff in for my family. All that stuff. Well, I help men see how sometimes finding ways to support themselves allows them to really be the support that their family needs them to be. And so, let's get to today's topic. Today I'm talking about something that doesn't get a lot of attention, and that's male depression, particularly for new dads. So we're going to talk about 3 surprising signs that a new dad may be suffering from depression. Now there's more and more talk about male postpartum depression, something that took a long time for us to take seriously in women. But we're looking at data now that shows us that new dads experience something similar. The thing is, when we talk about men and depression, our gender stereotypes get kicked up. So try this experiment, if you will. Quickly imagine a depressed person. Now, if you're like most people, you thought of a woman. You thought of her surrounded by dark colors and grays and blues and very dark. Maybe she was in bed and couldn't get up. Maybe she was crying. Well, this, of course, is what the media shows us. It's how a depressed person looks on all the pharmaceutical advertisements for antidepressants. And for many people, both men and women, that is what depression is. Yet often depression in men can look different. Now you're thinking, I don't fit the stereotype of someone who can't function. That's just not me. Well, depression in men is often masked. And what makes this even more challenging is that men on the whole are celebrated for some of the behaviors that are masking the depression. So we're going to take a look at 3 types of things to look for in yourself or in a man you care about that could give us some clues that there's an underlying depression that's getting in your or their way. So here are the 3 things: distancing, irritation, and aggression. So one of the first things we're going to look for is how someone might be distancing themselves from their feeling, particularly depression. This can take many forms, and the extremes that come to mind are addictions right away. And now I don't want to take away from the very, very real physical part of these addictions, but it can help to reframe the behavior as a way of how you're preventing yourself from dealing with something painful. You could be using alcohol, another substance, it could be porn, it could be even binge watching a TV show, and I've listed a bunch more there. If this behavior is something that you're regularly doing to numb yourself, if it's effectively keeping something else at bay, this is an indication of depression. So, big caveat, I keep saying depression, but I really don't care what we call it. Many diagnoses are most helpful for insurance purposes, so the wording doesn't mean a lot to me. Like I said, call it whatever you want, but I'm calling it depression today. So let's go back to distancing, and let's consider that you watch Game of Thrones over and over again. And this is at the expense of connecting with a partner, with your child, with getting work done, advancing a career or school. Maybe the behavior is stopping you from grieving a horrible loss or from dwelling on a past trauma you can't forget. Well, you need to decide if this distancing behavior is worth it to keep that up for the rest of your life, if you're going to be able to do that. If it can really help you from feeling those things, particularly those of you who are recent parents, because children have a way of catching us unaware and tapping on all those buttons that perhaps the very kind adults in our lives have learned to walk around, or we might even say they enable us at times. Children aren't going to be able to do that, and they shouldn't. And remember, you can also be distancing yourself by being present without being present. So whether it's physical distancing or emotional distancing, this is a clue that you might have some underlying depression. It's if you're using something to numb or to push away feelings. All right, the next one can be surprising because it seems to be how many of us are just known like it's part of our personality. And this is irritability. Not that you necessarily irritate or annoy others, although you might, but this has to do with how easily you get irritated. Now, God knows, there's a lot going on to annoy us. I live in Brooklyn, like I said. Rush hour on the subway or in a car can get to you. This is something that's more constant, something that's always waiting right below the surface, if it's even below the surface. So some questions for yourself. Do you find that you're in a regular state of annoyance? Are you called a curmudgeon, even though you're, I don't know, in your 30s or your 40s, or worse, in your 20s? Do you find it impossible to do things that you enjoy because there's always something that ruins it? Someone is too loud, or the transportation's always off, people are taking too long. There's always something. Now again, like the distancing behaviors, this irritability can be masking a whole lot more that's going on inside. Because if you take this to the next step, you may become aware that you're irritated because those people won't move faster. And don't they realize that they're being inconsiderate? And why are people always like this to me? And why don't I get enough respect? And how dare people walk all over me? So you see where I'm going here. It's easy from here to move towards self-pity. And to avoid that, we can move to, I'm just going to stuff this in, I'm going to move it along. But all the while, you're feeling worse and worse about the world and how difficult everything has to be. So this is different because it's not that you're just annoyed by something, it gets cleared up and you let it go. Something just keeps its hold on you. And again, a baby can do this. You want to know who has no respect for you in your long day? Your 3-month-old. Surely you intellectually know this. But maybe you're going to get irritated anyway. Or you're going to go back to number one and find yourself avoiding, like staying at work later and later. You can tell yourself I have to make more money, expenses have gone up. But this gives you a good excuse for missing yet another hour of being with a partner who isn't as focused on you as they used to be, and a baby who is, doing whatever they want. The third sign of depression I want to look at today is aggression. So let's go back to that person who's walking too slow. So instead of stuffing it down and feeling miserable and getting into that self-pitying place or that irritated place, because you're worried that that's going to lead you to a stereotypical depression, you get visually angry. You yell, you bang a table, you kick something, you're going to drive too fast, too recklessly. And maybe this has been a help for you in the past. Maybe it keeps people aware of you and maybe even a little afraid of you. And you can see how they work hard not to get you worked up. But you also know how dangerous this can get. Besides you getting hurt, you can hurt someone else. And remember, as a dad, you're always modeling. All the time, you're modeling. You're showing your kids how to acceptably deal with frustration. You're showing them how to get angry. You're showing them how to get upset, how to be sad. And we're separating this. We're separating the irritability and the aggression, but they're just more ways of avoiding. Avoiding the sadness, avoiding the shame, avoiding the depression. In order to deal with this depression, these are the three things that we need to first let go of. The distancing, the irritation, and the aggression. You need to become aware that all of them, the distancing, the avoidance, the irritability, your aggression could very well be preventing you from connecting with other people, yes, your child, yes, but they're also keeping you from connecting with yourself and maybe something that's more painful that you've been trying to manage. Maybe that's sadness or grief. Often it's shame of some kind. And these are all connected to that depression we talk about. Many, many, many men don't seek help to move beyond these three behaviors because it can be more acceptable to be aggressive, to be angry, to be annoyed, to disconnect with sex or overwork than it is to feel any of those more vulnerable things. As guys, we're often afraid we're going to get stuck there in that proverbial quicksand. These behaviors are often a way to avoid the seemingly worst trap of that depression. Once we open the door, we will become the stereotype of that depressed person, and we're very worried about that. We're worried we're not going to be able to move through all that. That's not the case. Sure, you may need to go there for a little bit, but you don't have to stay there. You don't need to get stuck in a circle of feeling bad all the time because that helps no one. Not you, not the people in your life. certainly not your child. The secret here is to go into the feeling, go into the depression, to discover that you, like other guys, can get to the other side. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. It's easier to stuff the feelings in. It can be easier to punch a wall. It's easier to masturbate 5 times a day. At least it was easier. Those things may have helped for a while, but you're here because they're not helping anymore, and now you can decide. So today we looked at 3 signs that you or a dad that you care about may be suffering from depression. If it's you, you have a choice. You can move away from those behaviors and learn to connect with others instead of being irritated or angry all the time. You got to ask if you really want to. Are you ready to give those up? If you're worried about what will happen if you quit these behaviors, get in touch with me or another counselor so that you have a coach to move you through this. Because in fact, doing it alone may just be reinforcing the number 1, the distancing behavior. So one of the first steps here is to know that you're not alone. What you're feeling is real, and the many, many ways you're avoiding not feeling it are bound to get you in the long run. So thank you for taking the time to listen. Feel free to share this if you think it'll resonate with someone you know. And I look forward to any comments, questions, or thoughts you might have. My contact info is right there. All right, so long for now.